The idea behind Dustswap, the butterfly effect, is that the main character shown in Dusttale, which are particularly Sans and Papyrus, get their roles swapped, which are considered the murderer role and the follower roles, respectively. What exactly is the story? Okay, so imagine this. Sans, the chill skeleton you know, suddenly decides it's time to stop being chill. Instead of letting Papyrus go off and chat with a human in a genocide bun, like he usually would do, he's like, hey bro, maybe don't do that. This might end up in a disaster, and I'm not emotionally prepared for that today, okay? But Papyrus, bless his optimistic little soul, insists that they must talk to the human. So, since both of them were unable to settle this debate, they decided to bring a backup person to decide which option would be better. So they ask Anny, the fish warrior who solves problems by hitting them really hard, to solve this debate. But oh boy, that backfires, because Anny doesn't exactly have a talk it out situation in her playbook. Papyrus becomes horrified of Anny's idea, since he just wants to help the human to become better. A fight breaks out, where things, well, get intense and get out of hand. They're shouting, their stubbornness, and their Sans awkwardly stuck in the middle of both arguments, probably regretting every life choice that led him to this moment. And then it happened. Anny, trying to push Sans out the way, bobs him with a blunt of her spear, forgetting that Sans has only 1 HP, and this results into the death of Sans. Devastated over this death, Papyrus lashes out. So he uses a strong enough attack to stun her, but because Anny let her guard down, this attack straight up killed her. Papyrus, of course, is extremely shocked at what he has done and runs back home, curled up in his bed, and wishes really hard that everything that he just experienced was just a bad dream. Then twists in common. Sans shows up. He's fine, a bit dusty, maybe, but definitely not dead. And also he has how should I explain it? A hole in his head. Turns out Anny's attack didn't kill him. What a surprise. Just made him, well, accidentally extremely mad and insane. So I don't know if this is better or worse, since we all know how Sans acts when he is written as an insane or mad person in any AU. You see, Sans' master plan in this AU is to tell Papyrus that they need to make the humans stop. And to do that, Papyrus needs to be stronger. Why can't Sans be stronger? Well, you see, when Anny hit Sans with her spear, she kind of nerfed him, meaning he can't use his blue magic or bone magic anymore. So he needs Papyrus to do the killing. At first, Papyrus was absolutely against this idea, but thanks to some clever convincing and the fact that Papyrus full-heartedly trusts Sans, Sans was able to convince Papyrus of starting to kill monsters. But before Papyrus would become the ultimate killing machine, we need to have a montage, because Papyrus was always scared in this AU to do the killing blow or even to hurt someone. Whenever he tried to do so at first, Papyrus would either cry or run away before he could do the finishing blow, until Sans convinces him to do so. After killing a lot of monsters, the EXP that Papyrus gained and the LV Papyrus gained results into Papyrus becoming madder and madder, which results into him actually enjoying all these killings. One example of these enjoy kills is when Papyrus kills Mettaton, where he becomes unhinged by audibly laughing while murdering Mettaton or some other important monsters. The only breaks Papyrus has is ironically Sans, who stops him from becoming completely unhinged by saying, bro, I think he's dead. Let's go to the double monster, okay? But don't worry, he gets madder in this AU. Speaking of madder, Sans also becomes madder in this AU. While he is not as active as Papyrus, he is more mysterious. But since he can't use his magical abilities to his fullest, since his head trauma stops him from doing that, and since he stopped treating his head trauma, he can only use magic in an extremely desperate situation, and the drawbacks would be extreme headaches. So, is he completely useless? Well, not exactly. Some key details would be that he is a stalker, a complete creep and pretty much a psychopath. He would steal Frist's belongings, stalk them across the underground, taunt and threaten them whenever given the chance, even purposely leading the human into Papyrus traps just so he can watch them get violently murdered. Another detail to point out about Sans is during his later stage he would grow delusional and would start take things into his own hands, such as confronting Asgore about what he and Papyrus are doing, not to fight but to talk trash. He also talks with Alphys after Papyrus kills Metaton and Sans smashes the remaining parts into tiny bits. Well, this talk results into Alphys, well, how should I say it without getting demonetized once again, joining the Sayori Club, joining the Lisa Club, and Off-Tail Papyrus Club. Near the end of the story, Papyrus meets the human at the Judgment Hall. Sans absent from the situation, Papyrus begins to let out a few words about the stuff he has been doing, just to achieve his internal goal to make the human change. But while that is happening, Sans would be inside the throne room, having a chat with Asgore, who has locked himself in the throne room, protecting the souls from Sans. Asgore demands that Sans stop his brother. This, however, falls on deaf ears, as Sans begins to make a deal with him. He wants Asgore to hand over the souls for him and Papyrus in exchange for leaving him alone. But Asgore, knowing fully well that if he gives up the souls, the underground, maybe even the entire world, is at risk, it'd be game over, leaving the two to argue over this until Sans turns around. Before he leaves, he tells Asgore that he better savor his last few moments of peace. Every second counts, because whoever comes through that door won't be there to have a nice chat. By the way, Papyrus had a lot of prep time before the human came down in the Judgment Hall, so he turned the entire Judgment Hall into his deadly trap. You remember the trap he presented to us in Snowden? Yeah, exactly, that trap. But now it's working and he uses it. Anyway, Sans heads back to his brother so they can finally start their final fight. After that, the fight proceeds between the skeleton brothers and the human. This would consist of two phases, working similar to how Sans fights would go in the original game, with the first phase involving the player having to destroy the Gauntlet of Deadly Terrors, aka the trap Papyrus has created. Before they were even able to lay a finger onto either of the skeletons, Papyrus acting somewhat reluctant with his attacks during this phase, while Sans would be usually using the gauntlet itself to attack the human. After the gauntlet is successfully destroyed, Sans goes into a state of pure delusion and would try to throw a last magical attack in the attempt to kill the human right then and there, as by this point in the fight the human would be always down to a single HP. But because his head trauma is so strong and his attack is too powerful, he drops down on the floor and dies shortly after. Seeing this, Papyrus has a complete meltdown and the second phase of the fight starts, where Papyrus puts all the blame to the human and starts to attack more violently. So, how does the story end? Does the human eventually kill Papyrus? Well, there are exactly three endings. The in vain ending is simply put what happens when the player beats Papyrus and continues on with their journey. Not much else is to say. The price of victory ending is where Papyrus managed to kill the player. This happened if the player dies during a specific moment in the fight, or if they choose to give up when they die, which would only be accessible following Sans' death. The player's death would trigger an ending cutscene. It would consist of Papyrus grabbing Frist's lifeless body and slowly carrying it in its arms and making his way to the throne room. The last scene would be Papyrus entering the room and dropping Frisk's corpse onto the floor before leaving, ending on an image of Asgore's terrified expression, though you would still be able to reset after that. The Soulless God ending can only be achieved if the player gives correct series of response when questioned by Sans during his encounter. This leads to him thinking more on the idea of getting ahead of the souls in a last-ditch effort to overpower the player. This causes Sans' dialogue to change, or he succumbs to his injury, ranting about the human souls Asgore is hiding, indefinitely letting Papyrus know of where they are located. This ends the fight with Papyrus stunning the player rather than killing them, before he flees the scene, managing to get a hold of the souls from Asgore. Blind Papyrus had to brutally kill him before doing so. After absorbing them, the situation goes terribly wrong, as Papyrus would not be able to contain all the power of the souls alone. While the ROV he has accumulated, he would become a god, all the power but none of the control, and would let him unintentionally removing the human as a whole. On a side note, the Soulless God ending is a true ending of the Butterfly Effect, having a different outcome than the others if it were to be achieved in a legitimate game. If achieved, the game would close itself and the human supposed deletion change the icon of the game and leaves the launcher nameless. As if the player opened the game again, they would meet a still image of Papyrus' distorted face stare back at them. You would not be able to reset, leading the game permanently being soft-locked.